You're listening to the Perfectly Aligned podcast. Being in sync is good, but being perfectly aligned, that's where innovation happens. We explore bold ideas in finance and tech with the people behind them. I'm John from Datalign Advisory in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and in this first episode of the podcast, I sat down with the CEO of Datalign, Satayan, to talk about his unique journey. He started out building motion tech, like what powered the Nintendo Wii. Then he spent almost a decade leading teams at Amazon. We chatted about why he left big tech for a startup and how a legendary MIT entrepreneur convinced him to take the leap. Plus, hear about his beginner's mind way of thinking and where he sees AI going in the next few years. We joined this conversation with him teasing me about my past as a semi-professional dancer. Let's just dive in.
So John, you've been really holding out on me. You didn't tell me that you danced with Alvin Ailey.
Well, I think if you were to ask me to do that, I would embarrass myself. So I was strategically holding out on telling you.
That's ridiculous. I mean, that's like a life accomplishment. You could basically, kind of do that and just be done with life.
Well, I was thinking when I was younger, I could either dance and sing, or I could design motion technology and artificial intelligence. But we all have our callings.
That is an area that is near and dear to my heart. It's tied to the first company I started years ago called Modus. It was Modus Corporation. And so I just finished my undergraduate at MIT, and I had a bunch of friends that were at the Media Lab. And basically, we were excited about where MEMS technology was going. And so MEMS technology was really tied to, that was basically micromechanical devices. And what happened was, if you look at old gyroscopes, the ones that you used to guide submarines, they were about the size, a good one was the size of my fist. And so with the invention of MEMS technology, you now had shrunk these gyroscopes to the size of the tip of my fingernail. And so you could do a huge number of things with them. Along with that also came accelerometers, magnetometers. And so what we did at that company Modus is we designed the world's first 3D wireless motion sensor setup. And it was very, very cool. And it was about the size of my maybe half of my first digit on my finger. And we got amazing precision, amazing reliability, and we came up with very clever techniques for truthing, which is way outside the topic, I think, what you're asking. But then we applied it to a bunch of different spaces. And I first applied it, like any young 20-something would, to video games. And so we went back and started a company called iClub, which turned out to be a very good success. We helped a lot of people in the golf space through a conference that served the industry quite well for many years, and then went off a few years later to get really big into gaming. And along the path, we had a lot of inventions, including a motion language called graffiti. And it turned out graffiti was so powerful that everybody in the industry came to us and said, "Hey, can you help us?" And so that kind of bloomed us into a company called Modus Games. We introduced something called the Darwin controller, and we ended up becoming the innards for a lot of companies' technologies.
At what point in your entrepreneurial journey did you say, wow, we have something that's not only just like a really cool product idea, but something that could be like productized and owned in the mind share of our company?
Yeah, no, so patents are very interesting. It depends. If you're a small company, they're super powerful. If you're a larger company like an Amazon or a Meta or whatnot, it's more perfunctory. And for a small company, it's kind of a real defense. It allows you to kind of operate. It allows you to be innovative. It allows you to have time to kind of continue and innovate on an idea. As a large company, what's interesting is I think a lot of larger companies will have patents, but won't necessarily act on them. I think it's just a little currency people have, but they won't necessarily act on. And I think that getting an idea, I think that it's interesting because right now, if we're looking at the generative AI space, ideas are exploding. Patents in this space are exceptionally hard. It's very hard to get a patent in the Gen AI space unless you're doing fundamental technology, like companies like Liquid, companies like OpenAI that are kind of way ahead of the curve and thinking very differently. But I think in general, patents in this space are going to be very hard to get.
I mean, obviously the last 3 to 5 years, artificial intelligence and we'll come back to that because I think somebody who's been through the industry for a number of years has seen it evolve. We could myth bust and talk about like what's hype, what's real, but how long has AI been in the background and as far as like technology discourse? Like obviously consumers are using these terms now.
Yeah.
How far back do you have to go to where folks are like, hey, there's this technology field called AI. It's emerging. It's coming onto the scene.
Yeah, well, AI has been around since it coined as a term in the 1950s, and it's been around for a very, very long time. It is the hype today is a very small subset of artificial intelligence, which is generative AI, and that's basically the use of AI to create and interact in a very kind of human-like way, where you can share questions and you'll get human-like responses back, either orally or visually or written in the written form. And I think that's what's captured everyone's imagination, is that before, the biggest area of machine learning, of AI, was machine learning. And that was been very prominent since the 90s. And you look at companies like Amazon, you look at companies like Target or Meta or Google, and they kind of machine learning is their bread and butter. It's used for prediction, it's used for data analysis, it's used for a whole suite of things. And at that point, everyone is delighted. Everyone's like, wow, this is amazing. And so that's the beauty of machine learning. It's predictive. It can help a lot. And that's kind of a lot of what we do at Datalign, right? A lot of what we do at Datalign is we can predict which customers are going to fit with which advisors. And the goal is, at the end of the day, let's say, John, we connect you with advisors to say, wow, I never knew that advisor was going to be such a great fit for me. Thank you very much. Our goal is to delight and to make people super happy, super excited about their financial journey.
Cool. So I guess just to sort of continue on this career track, obviously you've mentioned Amazon a few times. What was the point at which you went from, I'm going to build these companies, to now I'm going to go into one of the biggest companies in the world and innovate there?
Yeah, no, Amazon is a fantastic company. I think what I loved about Amazon, and I still love about Amazon, is the discipline and rigor and innovation that they have. I think that when I began my journey at Amazon, I started in retail. And I think that is a great place for a lot of people to start. That is the most rigorous part of Amazon. It's the oldest part of Amazon. And the processes and discipline that makes Amazon begin there. And so I felt very privileged to have kind of started my career there at Amazon. And then basically it was very interesting, because then I moved around several times, and I moved into A9, which is the artificial intelligence group there, and I ran product for that group. And we did some very interesting things, innovative things in search and other areas in machine learning, all focused around design, delighting customers. I came up with a number of things that are patented, so I can talk about them, and they're public. Where we said, hey, what does the future of Alexa look like? Well, should it be a powerful shopping tool for people? And how do we make it innovative and work with television programs and TVs for in-TV marketing and whatnot?
Oh, wow, that was in your area?
That was in my area, yeah. And we did, a bunch of other things, like how do we, could we, for instance, put merchandise into games? Like if you take a game like GTA 4, and now you go to the store in Grand Theft Auto and you say, hey, I would like that. How could we have customized merch in the game that you can only buy in the real world? And so we created a lot of really great ideas and concepts. Another thing we did was shopping in social posts. That's now a thing.
Oh yeah, that's a giant industry.
Absolutely, but we did it first working with Snapchat. And so with Snaps, we were able to say, hey, how do we basically use visual search to figure out what things people have, and then use it to allow people to purchase it. And since then, other people are doing it as well, and other companies are doing it well. Meta is actually doing a great job with that.
So how long were you at Amazon in this capacity?
8-9 years.
Wow.
It was just a good time. Like, I really enjoyed my time there.
Well, so you love Amazon so much. You're doing, obviously you're on a trajectory there. You're there, you said 8 years. I read this article in the Boston Globe about you joining Datalign Advisory. And I read a quote I'd love to ask you about. It was you talking about Dave Blunden.
Yep.
And the quote is about how someone who may not know anything about a particular industry actually might be the best fit for leading a company in that industry. So I'd love to just unpack, how did you go from Amazon, motion technology, to now we're in the financial advisory space and we're solving totally new challenges?
Sure, yeah. No, so that's a really great question. So I have a firm belief, this has become a popular concept recently. And so in Buddhism we have this, in Hinduism we have this concept called the beginner's mind. And so it's when you approach something, you always approach it from kind of like, I don't know anything. Let me just come in and experience it and see what people have to say. And I think that my career, which looks probably a little wavy, going from motion tracking to golf to video gaming, actually to medical devices as well, we didn't talk about that, but also, then to 3 or 4 different areas within Amazon, which are all very different from each other, had nothing to do with each other, and now into financial services, which is something I'd never done before. You would say, "Wow, this guy's nuts! Like, why isn't he kind of going, into one area, which is what most people do?"
Right.
And I think the benefit of it really is that I'm coming from from a very different perspective. Like some of the things skill sets that I have that are core are customer obsession, customer trust, and you can build that. Any entrepreneur that's very good, and I'm knock on wood, I'm a good entrepreneur, will understand that. They'll understand the customer experience, the customer journey, and understand how do you build really beautiful products for people. And I think that that's the core underlying thing that follows through. But coming into a new space, you don't have the biases of people that have been in the space for a long time, right? You need that knowledge, right? You need to know what those people are thinking. But then you need to be able to take that and say, okay, what is better? And what can I now pull apart from this and build something better? And I think that's the real benefit, is you don't have the biases.
But that takes a high degree of humility.
Yeah.
To be able to put aside experience, lived experience, preconceived notions. So I guess what would be your advice to entrepreneurs, folks in product listening to you, talking about your career changes and your pivoting? How do you put that into practice in innovation and designing new products and new experiences in your career?
It's a great question. And I think most entrepreneurs, especially ones that have been around for a long time, are naturally curious. And I think that with that curiosity, you have to kind of put aside your assumptions and sometimes your core beliefs. And I think the more you're willing to deal with ambiguity, the more you're willing to deal with something that's just completely new and willing to accept it, that's when you can really innovate. And I think that beginner's mind concept basically pulls all these things together. And it says, look, I'm just going to come here like I'm a little kid. And I'm going to just experience it. I'm going to see where we can go, right? Where we can go, and what we can do, and what would really work, and what's really innovative. And you just put aside a lot of the old thinking, recognizing that it's there,
right?
But putting it aside.
So you wouldn't recommend not preparing for a meeting and saying, "It's the beginner's mind, Satayan."
No, quite the opposite. I think you want to study a lot, right? You want to base, and this is hard, right? Because you're holding two different things in your hands, right? In one hand, you're holding all the knowledge and research you learned about a space. So I'm definitely not saying the beginner's mind doesn't mean that you're not studying. It doesn't mean you're not learning about what's happened before you. It doesn't mean that you're kind of hearing what other people have to say. It simply means you're holding that in one hand, and the other hand saying, "Hey, look, I'm just going to explore this as if I don't know all these things."
So take me back to that discussion, maybe even set the scene for listeners. So talk a little bit about your relationship with Dave Blunden.
Sure.
Obviously, he's one of the most well-known, recognized people in entrepreneurialism, certainly in the Cambridge ecosystem.
Dave is definitely a pioneer in AI, especially in neural networks. And one of his companies, DataStage, was one of the earliest, I think, maybe their first MIT company in that area, in neural networks. And he did very well there. He's a fellow MIT alum. We both went to MIT. They were maybe about a decade apart. Dave and I got to know each other when I was on the board of EverQuote. It's another company of his. And I'd gone to school with Tomas Versi, one of the co-founders, along with Seth Birnbaum. And so got to meet Dave through being on the board. And we just stayed in touch over the years. And he called me up while I was at Amazon, saying, "Hey, why don't you would you like to come work over here with me?" And I think that it was very interesting because I loved my job at Amazon. I felt like I'd stay there forever.
Yeah.
It's Amazon's so lovely. Every couple of years, a few years, you can do something completely different, new, and you can do things at scale. And so it's a very fun place to be. But at the same time, I really love working with early career entrepreneurs. And so I said, maybe this is time. And so Dave and I kind of chatted a bit, and I joined Datalign, which is a concept of his to reinvent the financial wellness and financial services space, and connect consumers with advisors. And part of my job was to turn the company, which just started about a year old or so, and turn the company into kind of an AI powerhouse and really invent the product roadmap and kind of push it forward. And it's just been a lovely journey to come here. And it was funny because I think that I remember one of the people asked me, do you feel odd going from a company with 1 million plus people to a company with, when I joined, 6 or 7 people? And I said, no, it just really just felt like, riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
You never really forget it. So it felt very comfortable.
Amazing. So this is the first obviously this is the first episode of the Perfectly Aligned podcast. So for our listeners, the point is really to do just this, right? To bring, real, authentic, casual, candid conversations. Obviously, because we're a financial technology company, our topics are going to skew maybe more in that area. But I think the point is, as Satayan said, is that change and transformation are the only constant. So Satayan, tell the listeners a little bit more about what sort of topics and ideas that they could expect in future episodes.
Oh gosh, I think that it's going to really depend on the person you bring into your room. I think that for instance, I think you should be hearing about really great in-depth AI innovation, especially on the generative AI side, from our CTO Andy. I think you're going to hear about some very interesting new AI design frameworks from our Chief Design Officer Puneet.
Right. So I think if you're listening and you're wondering who this is for, I think obviously we all think about money. We all think about our finances. We all live in a world that is saturated with real information and fake information. And so I think by having these conversations, Satayan, at least one of the goals for me is to bring to the forefront not only the need for trusted guidance, I think that's something that we could all believe is true, but the how. What is the promise of technology in terms of finding the right advisor? Personally, I just think there's a lot of one-size-fits-all approaches out there. And with the provision of LLMs and more content, yeah. I think we're at, I hate to say a paradigm shift, but that's kind of how I feel like we're...
No, I think you're spot on, John. I think at the end of the day, it is a change with generative AI to hyper-personalization, right? It is going to be hyper-personalization at a scale and kind of at a level we've never seen before. And I think that we've seen components of that in companies like Amazon and Google, where they can really get you to exactly where you need to go. But I think that now, especially what we're building at Datalign, all the custom agents that we're building that will service consumers in many, many different ways, but focus on their very specific needs. I think it's going to feel like you have a suite of experts available to you daily, where if you need some expert advice on mortgages, we have that person. You want expert advice on 401ks, we have that person. You want expert advice on, tax deferred kind of, investments, we have that as well. And so I think that you'll have all these agents coordinated through our central agent who will be available for you 24/7. And the nice thing is that these agents that we're building will support your financial advisor, and so that you can basically get this advice, and it will provide you a better conversation with your advisor when you connect with them.
Fantastic. So before we let you go, Satayan, question I want to ask you, and a question we'll ask all of our guests. The name of the program is Perfectly Aligned. What does that phrase mean to you in the first place?
To me, perfectly aligned is something that varies for every person. And it's not simply something that's static. A couple that just gets married may have a vision of what perfectly aligned is. As they move through life, that changes. And so the beauty of what we're doing at Datalign, and the beauty of kind of what we'll also be doing with this podcast, is be providing people information and guidance and thoughts and conversations that should be very relevant as you move through your different life stages. And I think that's I'm very excited about it. I think it's a good concept. I'm really eager to hear what our customers and even our team members think about Perfectly Aligned.
Amazing. Well, we'll have Satayan back, I think, for a part 2, where we dive a little bit deeper into the financial crisis. And I think a little bit more, Satayan, what you described are the tools and the advantages that financial advisors today can have access to through all this innovation. So we'll have you back to maybe unpack some of those ideas. But for folks listening, we really appreciate you spending time with us on the Perfectly Aligned podcast. And we'll be back soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Perfectly Aligned. If you're looking for a trusted financial advisor or just want more perspectives on finance and tech, connect with us at datalignadvisory.com or on LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.